It promised to revolutionize Grand Prix racing with technology no one had ever seen. 8 valves per cylinder, oval pistons defying every engineering rule. Honda's brilliant engineers betting their careers on an impossible dream. But buried in that revolutionary engine was a fatal flaw so explosive it would disintegrate at 10,000 RPM, showering tracks with broken metal and shattered ambitions. This is the shocking truth behind the NR500 that nearly destroyed Honda's racing legacy. The four-stroke gamble, November 1977. Honda's boardroom in Tokyo held a secret that would shock the racing world. After abandoning Grand Prix competition in 1968 to focus on automobiles, the company was coming back. Not with the two-stroke engines dominating every podium, not with proven technology, with four-stroke engines in an era when everyone knew four-strokes couldn't win. You might think this was corporate suicide. The entire racing paddock certainly did. Company founder Soichiro Honda had made the decision personally. Honda manufactured four-stroke motorcycles. Honda would race four-stroke motorcycles. The logic was simple, even if the execution would prove anything but. When the FM announced regulations in 1968 limiting 500cc engines to just 4 cylinders, they handed two-stroke engines a massive advantage. Honda withdrew rather than compromise their engineering philosophy. But a 12-year absence gnawed at Honda's soul. Racing had built the company's reputation. Racing validated their technology. Racing was in their DNA. The time had come to return. Consequences be damned. The problem was brutal in its simplicity. Two-stroke engines produced around 120 horsepower in the late 1970s. Four-stroke engines, limited to 4 cylinders by FIM rules, couldn't match that output using conventional design. Physics didn't care about corporate pride or engineering philosophy. Honda needed a miracle. In April 1978, that miracle began taking shape at the Osaka R&D Center. A new division called the NR Block, formed with a singular mission: create a 4-stroke engine capable of beating 2 strokes. The letters NR stood for New Racing, but they could have meant nearly ridiculous, given what came next. The development team consisted of just 3 engineers. 3 young engineers with no Grand Prix experience. 3 young engineers about to attempt the impossible. Lead engineer Toshimitsu Yoshimura would later recall the raw determination of those early days. They weren't just building a racing engine, they were creating something to surprise the entire world. Something that would bring glory back to Honda. Something that, as it turned out, would bring them to the edge of disaster first. Birth of the oval. The engineering challenge seemed insurmountable. To match 120 horsepower from a 4-stroke engine, you needed twice the RPM of a 2-stroke. Higher RPM demanded better intake efficiency. Better intake efficiency required more valves. More valves needed more space. Standard piston design couldn't accommodate 8 valves per cylinder. The math simply didn't work. Then someone asked the question that would define the entire project. Why does a piston have to be circular? The reason was simply that we were all so young, Yoshimura admitted years later. We had nothing to fear. You could even say we had no preconceived notion that a piston had to have a circular cross-section. The oval piston concept emerged from that youthful fearlessness. An oval cross-section created space for 8 valves per cylinder. 8 valves per cylinder across 4 cylinders meant 32 valves total. Add 8 spark plugs, 2 per cylinder, and you effectively had a V8 engine's breathing capacity while staying within the 4-cylinder rules. The team ran the calculations. Their oval piston, 8-valve design, would produce an estimated 130 horsepower at 23,000 RPM. Those numbers looked beautiful on paper. Getting them to work in reality would require solving problems that didn't yet have names. Honda designed a DOHC V4 configuration with a 100-degree V-bank angle. The 0X engine, as they designated it, incorporated technology that seemed pulled from science fiction. Aluminum semi-monocoque frame, wrapping the engine like a cocoon. 16-inch Comstar wheels instead of the standard 18-inch versions. 2 connecting rods per oval piston. 32 valves operated by gear-driven cams. Every innovation created new challenges. Every solution spawned 3 new problems. But the development staff believed they had a winning idea. Now, they needed the winning formula. Testing began with a 2-valve single-cylinder prototype. The oval piston revved. They gradually increased valve count, eventually reaching 8 valves on a single cylinder. Confidence grew. The concept worked. Then they scaled up to 4 cylinders, and everything went wrong. Engineering hell. The phenomenon appeared without warning at 10,000 revolutions per minute. The engine would simply disintegrate. Parts exploded. Connecting rods twisted. Pistons shattered. The development team watched in horror as their revolutionary engine tore itself apart on the test bench. The cause took weeks to identify. Unlike conventional pistons with 1 connecting rod, oval pistons required 2. As engine speed increased, those twin rods would distort, pulling the piston pin out of alignment. The resulting forces exceeded material limits. Yoshimura's desk drawer would eventually fill with broken parts. Damaged connecting rods, shattered valves, physical reminders of how far they had to go. The team worked with Honda engineering to modify design specifications and improve machining accuracy. Progress came in painful increments. They tested different rod designs, different materials, different manufacturing tolerances. Each failure taught them something. Each success raised new questions. Piston rings proved equally nightmarish. The oval shape defied accurate machining with available technology. They experimented with split-type rings made of 2 parts. They formed rings into walking stick shapes. They tried every conceivable alternative before circling back to conventional self-stretching piston rings. Even those required extraordinary effort to calculate proper dimensions, free form during machining, constant bearing pressure when installed. NC machines in that era lacked the precision needed. Additional hand finishing became mandatory. Hours of grinding, testing, failure, repeat. The gear train and valve system created their own special hell. Initial designs used a reduction gear to turn the cam at half crankshaft speed. It failed constantly. They adopted a normal cam reduction gear train. It still failed. Finally, someone suggested a rubber damper meshing with the cam gear. The solution worked, bringing the unexpected bonus of higher power output. Engine braking proved excessively strong. The team developed a device called a back torque limiter. Problem solved. But another issue emerged, a sudden burst of power when opening the throttle, the dreaded bang. Despite countless attempts, they never fully resolved it. By early 1979, bench testing showed around 110 horsepower. Not the calculated 130, but enough to warrant track testing. The development staff believed they should install the engine in an actual racing machine to identify real-world weaknesses. 6 months of development, hundreds of failures, thousands of hours grinding parts by hand. The 0X engine was producing 100 horsepower at 16,000 revolutions per minute by July. Time to race. Baptism by fire. August 1979. Silverstone Circuit, England. The 11th Grand Prix race of the season would mark Honda's return to the world stage. 2 NR500 machines, each powered by a 0X engine, arrived in the paddock. Mick Grant and Takazumi Katayama would pilot them. Nobody expected victory. The machines weren't ready. The engines hadn't reached their target output, but Honda needed to see their creation perform under race conditions. Theory had to meet reality. Reality proved brutal. Both bikes barely qualified, landing in the last group on the grid. The humiliation of starting at the back stung, but worse was coming. When the race began, Grant fell at the very first corner. Oil from the NR500 had spilled onto his rear tire. He crashed in a shower of sparks, marshals rushing to douse the bike with fire-retardant powder. Katayama lasted 7 laps before ignition problems forced retirement. Honda's grand return ended in complete disaster. The gap between their machines and their rivals wasn't just wide, it was devastating. Engineers who had poured their souls into the project watched their dream die on track. I felt miserable. Just miserable, Yoshimura remembered. Tears welled up in my eyes. The French Grand Prix, the season's final race, delivered even greater embarrassment. Both riders failed to qualify. Honda's revolutionary engine couldn't even earn a place in the race. Someone asked Yoshimura to watch the race video afterward. He couldn't bring himself to see it. The losses in the UK and France were painful reminders that the road ahead stretched far longer than anyone had imagined. The NR500 had completed 0 laps at its debut. It had finished 0 races in 1979. It entered 2 Grand Prix events that year, Silverstone and the French Grand Prix, but failed to finish either. In France, neither rider even qualified. 0 points. The oval piston concept that looked so brilliant on paper had proven deadly in practice. Chasing shadows. Honda persevered through 1980 and into 1981. Slowly, painfully, the NR500 improved. The monocoque frame had to be abandoned. It made engine access too difficult for mechanics working between practice sessions. The innovative 16-inch wheels gave way to conventional 18-inch versions. Weight became an obsession. The 4-stroke engine's larger cylinder head added approximately 20 kilograms compared to 2-stroke rivals. That mass affected not just straight-line performance, but handling and center of gravity. Engineers replaced iron components with titanium, aluminum with magnesium. Before races, staff would labor overnight grinding parts with pencil grinders, shaving grams wherever possible. Nothing closed the gap. By 1982, the 2X modified engine achieved 135 horsepower. Progress, but 2-stroke engines had improved as well. The NR500 finally matched its rival's output. Unfortunately, that parity came 3 years too late. There were bright moments. Kengo Kiyama won the 1981 Suzuka 200-kilometer race using an oval piston engine, Honda's first and only victory with the revolutionary technology. That same year at Laguna Seca, Freddie Spencer led Yamaha's Kenny Roberts for several laps before electrical problems forced retirement. Spencer's brief domination proved the NR500's potential. Almost winning wasn't winning, but it showed the concept could work. In World Grand Prix competition, though, results remained abysmal. A 13th place finish by Katayama at the 1981 Austrian Grand Prix marked the NR500's best World GP showing, 13th place. 3 years of development, countless failures, endless grinding, breakthrough innovations, and the best result was 13th. The NR500 never won a Grand Prix, not one. Pressure mounted from all sides. Japan demanded success. International media questioned Honda's stubbornness. Rival teams using proven 2-stroke technology dominated podiums, while Honda's engineers watched from the back of the grid. By 1983, the 3X engine reached what Yoshimura would later call more than 95% maturity. It produced 130 horsepower at 19,500 revolutions per minute. The oval piston concept had finally achieved its original target. The engine worked, but it was too late. The bitter end. Honda had made a decision that would end the NR500's racing career before the 3X engine ever turned a wheel in competition. In 1982, as a compromise to finally reach the winner's podium, they introduced the NS500, a machine powered by a 2-stroke engine. The NS500 performed exactly as predicted. It won. It conquered. Freddie Spencer rode it to Honda's first 500cc World Championship in 1983. Everything the NR500 couldn't achieve, the NS500 accomplished immediately. The oval piston engines that had consumed years of development, broken countless parts, and shattered numerous dreams sat in the pits, shelved, forgotten. The 3X engine, the culmination of everything Honda had learned, the mature version of the technology they'd pioneered, never entered a single race. The engine was designed for racing, Yoshimura said, reflecting on those painful final days. So we wanted it to be a winning design. Honda abandoned the NR500 project completely. The 4-stroke gamble that had begun with such promise ended in undeniable failure. 0 World Grand Prix victories across multiple seasons, 1 win at Suzuka, 1 almost victory at Laguna Seca, 13th place as the best World GP result. What doomed the NR500 wasn't a single flaw, but an accumulation of problems. Honda had tried developing too many technologies simultaneously: the oval pistons, the monocoque frame, the 16-inch wheels, the back torque limiter, the rubber-damped cam gears. Each innovation solved one problem while creating others. The cumulative complexity overwhelmed their resources. Weight remained insurmountable. Manufacturing precision exceeded available technology. The bang when opening the throttle never fully disappeared. And critically, two-stroke rivals didn't stand still. They improved while Honda struggled. The NS500's success made continuing the NR500 impossible to justify. Racing exists to win. The NS500 won. The NR500 didn't. Corporate reality demanded the obvious choice. For Yoshimura and his team, the decision was devastating. They had achieved their engineering target. The 3X proved oval pistons could produce competitive power. But racing doesn't award trophies for reaching technical targets. Racing demands victories. If we had won at Laguna Seca, Yoshimura admitted, we could have been content with that and put a more peaceful end to the engine's racing history. Instead, the NR500's racing history ended with broken parts in a drawer and tears at Silverstone. Legacy of the dream. The story could have ended there. Another failed experiment, another engineering dead end, another cautionary tale about hubris and complexity. But Honda's engineers refused to let the NR500 die completely. Development of oval piston technology continued quietly after the NS500 replaced the NR500 on Grand Prix grids. By 1987, the NR750 was producing 155 horsepower at 15,525 RPM, contesting the 24 Hours of Le Mans and other endurance events. The technology Honda couldn't make win on Grand Prix circuits found success in different racing formats. Then, in 1992, Honda released something extraordinary, the NR, a limited edition 750cc street bike that crystallized everything learned from the NR500 project. Oval pistons, 8 valves per cylinder, twin fuel injectors per cylinder, an astronomical 15,000 revolutions per minute redline. The production NR wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a monument to perseverance. The back torque limiter developed for the NR500 found its way into many mass-production Honda motorcycles. The V4 engine configuration became symbolic of Honda engineering. Technologies pioneered during those desperate development years influenced everything from sport bikes to touring machines. Perhaps most importantly, the NR500 fostered what Yoshimura called the spirit of challenge in Honda's engineering culture. The broken connecting rods and shattered valves he kept in his desk drawer eventually went to younger engineers as reference materials, physical reminders that innovation requires failure, that pushing boundaries means sometimes breaking them. To create anything, you must put your heart and soul into it, Yoshimura reflected. The development of oval piston engines impressed that upon me, as well as on the other young engineers. The NR500 never won the Grand Prix victory Honda sought. It brought embarrassment instead of glory, failure instead of triumph. But it proved something perhaps more valuable, that attempting the impossible, even when you fail, creates knowledge that transforms entire companies. Honda's decision to race 4 strokes against dominant 2 strokes seemed insane in 1979. The oval piston solution appeared equally mad. Both decisions led to disaster on track. Yet from that disaster came the NR750, came advanced manufacturing techniques, came an engineering culture willing to chase impossible dreams. The NR500 died at Silverstone in a shower of sparks. But its legacy lived on, evolving, improving, eventually succeeding where the original failed. Sometimes the most important victories aren't the ones measured in race results. The conventional wisdom in 1979 said Honda was insane. 4 strokes couldn't compete. Oval pistons defied physics. Young engineers with no experience couldn't revolutionize Grand Prix racing. Every expert knew these things. Every expert was right about the racing results. Every expert missed what mattered most. When parts exploded at 10,000 revolutions per minute, engineers learned how materials behave under forces no textbook had calculated. When piston rings refused to seal, they developed manufacturing techniques a decade ahead of their time. When the monocoque frame proved impractical, they discovered truths about serviceability that influenced every racing machine afterward. The back torque limiter invented for excessive engine braking found its way into countless production motorcycles. The V4 configuration that seemed so problematic became Honda's signature engine layout, powering everything from VFR street bikes to championship-winning endurance racers. Technologies that failed on Grand Prix grids succeeded everywhere else. By 1987, the NR500 produced 155 horsepower at 15,525 RPM. The 1992 production NR Limited Edition Expensive, Extraordinary Dash represented the vindication Yoshimura never got on racing circuits. That street-legal motorcycle with oval pistons, 8 valves per cylinder, and a 15,000 RPM redline proved the concept was never wrong. Just early. Just too ambitious for the resources available. Perhaps that's the real truth buried in the NR500's failure. Innovation doesn't follow convenient schedules. Revolutionary technology doesn't emerge fully formed. Sometimes you attempt the impossible at exactly the wrong moment, fail completely, yet create something more valuable than victory: knowledge, capability, and the courage to try again. The young engineers who cried at Silverstone, who ground parts by hand through endless nights, who watched their dream machine finish dead last, they built Honda's future, even as their present collapsed. The determination to challenge convention, regardless of consequences, the refusal to accept limitations just because nobody had overcome them, that became more valuable than any championship. The broken connecting rods Yoshimura kept in his desk drawer eventually went to younger engineers as reference materials. Physical proof that attempting the impossible, even in failure, creates knowledge that transforms companies. Those parts represented a dream he hoped would grow in the hearts of his successors and drive them to new innovations. 3 years, 0 Grand Prix victories, 1 win at Suzuka. The NR500 lost every race that mattered. But from that disaster came the NR750, came advanced manufacturing techniques, came an engineering culture willing to chase impossible dreams. The spirit kindled at Osaka, the determination to surprise the world regardless of odds, remains more valuable than any trophy could ever be. Some engines are remembered for championships, others for changing what came after. The NR500's oval pistons never won, but they refused to accept that innovation had limits. And in that refusal, they created Honda's future.